are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with Kellen and TJ, and I'm super excited for this week's guest. He's an actor, director, producer, musician, and one of the cornerstones of The Last Drive-In with Briggs, Mr. John Brennan. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for having me. A cornerstone. I kissed the Blarney Stone in Ireland. You ever hear that? I heard that the locals sometimes pee on the Blarney Stone. So that
Really?
when the tourists come and they kiss it, you know what happens.
That
Nice.
sounds like a very Irish thing to do for my background.
I'm sorry. I just let me ask a quick question before we start. Am I allowed to cuss?
You can say
100%.
whatever you
Okay,
want.
great.
Whatever you want.
And then other than that, if I take my shirt off, that'll probably be all right too. All right, great.
We'd be
We save
disappointed
that to the end. We all take our shirts off.
Okay,
It's the whole
excellent. That was my
So,
question.
We appreciate you taking some time with us. We'll just jump right in. You live in New York, and I think a lot of people know you now more for The Last Drive-In, but you've worked for Trauma for almost 10 years. You worked with them.
So I started in like 2013, so it will be 10 this year. So this is actually a decade of Trauma Association. Yeah.
Nice. So how did you get involved with Uncle Lloyd and get into producing and acting and doing all that Trauma stuff?
Well, as far as getting involved with the actual company, like I knew Trauma when I was a kid. The first movie I ever saw from them was probably like a Cinemax late night thing. One of the first nights I was allowed to stay up late, and I caught Class of Nukem High Part 2 on
Nice.
one of those, and it blew my mind. That's the one where the squirrel gets big and they have the mouths and the belly buttons, and it just it's like a Looney Tunes cartoon, but with nudity and violence. How could a 10-year-old not love it? But then, through the years, once I learned who Trauma was, I would rent all the stuff. Toxic Avenger 2 and 3 were the first Toxic Avengers I saw. Then I went back to the original, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as getting involved, I was following Lloyd on Twitter when I first joined. He was one of the first people I followed. And he put out a tweet that said, Trauma's looking for editing volunteers. And I had just moved back to New York. I sort of like knew how to edit all right. I had done a few music videos and stuff. So I sent it around, and they liked it. So they brought me on as an editing volunteer, and that's how it started. I got to make some of Lloyd's, he does the make your own damn movie lessons.
Yes.
Yeah, they're amazing. But at that time, he was past the books, past the DVDs, and was just doing like oh, look at that. You got it. Make your own damn movie.
I used to have the original DVD set. That's what motivated me and my cousin to try and make our own documentary back in the day.
Oh, and you got the Toxic Avenger. That's amazing. I think I have Toxie up here somewhere.
Well, that's a Toxic Crusader, sir, not an Avenger.
Yeah, I got the Crusader too. Oh, here he is. Yeah. Same one.
Nice.
Hey.
I used to have him. Yeah. With the
That's
mop
amazing.
and everything.
Yeah, he's got everything. So yeah, I did make your own damn movie lessons for YouTube, and the first one that we did was a sell your own damn movie, but Lloyd called it how not to sell your own damn movie. Go look it up. It's called Jason and the Argonauts, and it's about how Lloyd got invited to a screening at some sort of a Brooklyn art space. But it turned out that they were just going to project his movie from a laptop onto a bed sheet, a filthy bed sheet, and it's a very interesting take on like why Lloyd is probably the hardest working man in show business. That he would even take a gig like that and just go and talk to maybe 10 people while his movie whispered from a laptop without actual speakers in an art space. So that's
Wow.
Uncle Lloydie.
And he and like I said before we came on, like Kellen and I met him a couple of years ago, and he does just feel like your uncle. Like maybe a little creepy at times, but he's hilarious. Like he was such a sweetheart, and can't wait to meet him again.
Hell yeah, he's amazing.
I noticed a lot of what well, according to IMDb, a lot of what you worked with Trauma is the Dolphin Man and Sergeant Kabuki Man. Is there a reason? Is there a fondness for you with that? Is there a reason that's kind of what you're drawn to?
Well, there's two different reasons. So the Kabuki Man one started. It was just around the time when Trauma was trying to increase viewership on their YouTube channel, and at that point they had put up about 300 free movies or something like that. But they wanted to do a little original programming, and Lloyd's daughter Lily Hayes Kaufman was sort of like, spearheading that and trying to find original content. So I pitched Kabuki Man's Cocktail Corner because I had seen some behind the scene footage of Doug Sackman as Kabuki Man. I was like, where is this guy? Why isn't he doing some more Trauma stuff? So I contacted him, and he was down to make it. So we went on to do like 16 episodes, then an hour-long special. And I also have like unedited footage for about another 10 more episodes. So we're going to finish that at some point.
Okay.
And that, that was like, I liked Kabuki Man and everything, but that one just came out of like meeting the people and being in the right place in the right time to pitch something and just get it done. But the Dolphin Man one, that happened because there was a guy there who was part of like PR or head of Trauma Team Video, something like that. And he said that his dream was to play Dolphin Man in a movie. So I said, hey, why don't we make a Dolphin Man short and have it be like a Trauma Dance promo? And it just came out of that guy Gibson wanting to play Dolphin Man. We made it, and then we ended up making 3 shorts. And one of them, Dolphin Man Battles the Sex Lobsters, went on to 33 film festivals on 6 continents. We're still chasing Antarctica. So any Antarctica scientists who want to screen Dolphin Man and call it Trauma Dance Antarctica, we're more than willing to play with that. Let's do it.
Awesome.
I watched a few of those today. They were fun. I also watched Return to Nukem High, aka Volume 2.
That's and you just said it correctly. Lloyd would be very upset if you just call it Return to Nukem High Volume 2. That's not the title. Return to Nukem High, aka Volume 2. The day that he said that was the title, we were like, how are we going to tweet about this movie? You already took up the whole tweet with the title.
I'm very fond of the series, like the original 3. Like I love them to death. This is the first time I watched this one. You have a part in it.
Yeah.
Did you co-produce this one?
Yeah. So about, I would say 30% of the movie was shot with all the stuff in like Niagara Falls and stuff. So we just had to fill in the blanks with the rest of the story, like all the stuff that was shot in Herzkoff's lair, all the stuff that was shot with Talking Tromaville, all the stuff. There was a bunch of kills and things that we added. Mark Torgel, when he gets the mop up his ass, Mark Torgel was the guy who played little Melvin the Mop Boy in The Toxic Avenger. His cameo is amazing. He has a mop shoved up his butt.
I love that part too, because look, it then goes like behind the scenes, and it's Lloyd and his wife saying, "You're not going to do that.
This is too far," which actually was true. That was based in. There were some things in the movie that didn't Pat and Lloyd would sort of argue over. So I think it was Gabe Friedman, the guy who wrote Poultry Guy, suggested, why don't you have a scene where you guys actually argue on screen? It'd be really funny. And it turns out to be one of the best scenes in the whole movie.
It really was. Like I love that. That movie was so insane. And I think the most impressive part of the whole thing was Lloyd's tuck job he did. I assume he did that himself. He didn't need any assistance, but
nope.
That was something. If you haven't seen that, it's on Tubi. Check it out.
So that's actually how I first got involved with that movie. Was I was still I think I was still a volunteer there, and Matt Mangiarides, who was head of Trauma Team Video at the time, said, we have a scene where Lloyd's going to reenact the Buffalo Bill the penis tucking scene, and we can't afford Goodbye Horses, of course, because it's it's Trauma. So he said, can you make a knockoff of Goodbye Horses and call it Silence of the Ducks? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I did it. So I went home, I sort of did a thing, and it's in the movie. That was my first step towards getting like full Trauma Team membership.
That's a way to do it, right? That is the way to do it.
And anybody who wants to watch it right now, it's on Tubi. It just came up on Tubi maybe last month or the month before. So
Yeah.
Return to Nukem High. Oh wait, no, Return to Nukem High.
I'm gonna tell Lloyd.
Don't tell him no.
That movie was so insane. It's I can only imagine Trauma is just so much fun to work for, right? Like working for them has to be a blast because the end of that movie they had a dance sequence where they all did a choreographed dance. Even Lloyd, like that was fantastic. Like,
and that's
I watched it. I'm like, it made me feel good inside. You know?
That's choreographed by a real Bollywood like dance team here in New York. I think Ajit, AJIT. I'll look up the actual name of the people, but yeah, they choreographed the thing. They learned it with the cast, and it's really well done. It's really funny. But yeah, that's just like one of the many things that Lloyd. It's almost like that movie is what's going on in his head 24/7, where it's like now this idea. It's just like I think the Trauma movie that. Yeah, it encapsulates Lloyd's mind on screen in the best way that other Trauma movies don't always get, you know? It's schizophrenic in a way, but I love it. It's so good.
And Stan Lee narrates.
Yes, Stan Lee narrates the whole thing. I think that was his second to last role. I think one other.
Yeah. When I heard that, I'm like, that was when did this come out? But yeah, he died in 2018.
Yeah. So
which is great. Did you get to meet him at all?
I didn't get to meet him, but Lloyd, as a surprise, when he was recording that final voiceover, he because apparently Sergeant Kabuki Man is Stan Lee's favorite Trauma movie. So Stan Lee did a sentence intro. He said, "Hi, you're watching Kabuki Man's Cocktail Corner. I'm Peter Parker. Enjoy the show," or something like that. So we animated in one of the episodes a whole like Spider-Man thing where Spider-Man's running through Tromaville and he rips off his mask and it's Stan Lee and he says the word "Welcome to the episode." So I worked with Stan Lee in a crazy way just because Lloyd was nice enough to get that soundbite. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I was fortunate enough to see him in one of his last appearances at a convention, and I'm so glad I paid the money to do that because like I didn't even want to touch him. Like he was so frail, I didn't want to hurt him, but it was fantastic, and I'm sad he left. He didn't create Spider-Man until he was 40 years old. I'm not quite there yet, so I have some hope.
There you go. Never give up.
Another Trauma movie you're associated with was Mutant Blast.
Yes. So
Mutant Blast is 100% on the tomato meter. I don't think there's another Trauma movie that's not a documentary that's still 100 on the tomato meter. How does it feel to be a part of a movie that's a hundo?
Well, it's amazing. So I didn't do a lot on Mutant Blast. Lloyd kind of gave me that associate producer credit because while I was his assistant, I had to coordinate a few things for Mutant Blast, like his cameo. I had to get some special effects stuff delivered from America to Portugal. I had to talk to Fernando about the cuts and things like that. But I got a credit. I mean, Lloyd was nice enough. He was like, you did this extra work. Here's an associate producer credit. So, I mean, but for me, I think it's one of the best Trauma movies that's come out in the last 10 years. It maybe 100%. Even further, maybe the 21st century. And I think it's incredible. Fernando did an incredible job. He got a budget from the Portuguese government. They gave him a grant. And it's a great looking movie. It's really entertaining. And I suggest everybody go out and seek it out.
Yeah. So my favorite growing up was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And the reason is because they're villains and things, because there are all these different mutations. And I've always been attracted to that. So Mutant Blast was fantastic. Like I absolutely loved it because it kind of, it has creatures like that.
Hell yeah. That director also did co-directed one of the best Trauma shorts called Banana Motherfucker. Anybody who hasn't seen Banana Motherfucker, it's honestly, forget Trauma. It's one of the best short movies I've ever seen.
Nice.
Really?
Yes. Oh yeah.
We will seek that one out.
Go seek it out. It's so entertaining.
I'm going to pass off to TJ before I do. You said that you think Mutant Blast is one of the best Trauma movies. Which, in your mind, what's one of the best? What's your favorite Trauma movie?
Here we go. So let me look at something because I actually wrote down a list a while ago that I didn't get to talk about with another podcast about what I think are some of the most underrated Trauma movies. I mean, as far as favorites, Romeo and Juliet's amazing. Terra Firma. I'm of the age where the 90s Traumas movies would come on at like I said, Cinemax and stuff like that. So that 90s output was where I really fell in love with Trauma. So those are my favorite, like that whole decade. The Class of Nukem High 2, But also Class of Nukem High is a great one. But there's
I think
also
2 is the best.
Two's amazing. It's a living cartoon.
Yeah.
It's so good. But I have this list here. Hold on, it should be here in a second. Not to take up too much time. But like, okay, for instance, there's a movie that was an acquisition from I think from 2010 that just released in 2018 called Slimed. Slimed, it's on Troma now. It's honestly the most underrated Troma movie. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Combat Shock. Combat Shock is so good. That's on Tubi right now. I feel like, oh, here we go. The Last Horror Film. So the Last Horror Film
That's a really good movie.
It's a great movie, and Troma has the rights to it, and it's also called Fanatic. But it's basically a sequel to Maniac. Joe Spinell, Catherine Monroe.
I never thought about that, but
Yeah.
I could see that now.
It's like maybe it's not a sequel, but an equal. You know, like it's a parallel universe where he's almost like the same character. You know.
Yeah.
It's such a good movie. They what else? Obviously Night Beast, that's a Don Dohler movie, but Troma distributes it now. What a great movie. There's Nothing Out There. I don't know if that's still a Troma movie. The rights might have reverted to Rolf Konevsky, but it was a Troma movie for a very long time. And it's sort of like it predates Scream by 3 or 4 years, and it's a completely meta commentary on horror films. Like there's one scene, it's one of the greatest gags I've ever seen, is where this guy is running away from this monster and he's running through this living room, and all of a sudden he jumps up and he grabs onto the fucking boom pole and jumps over the monster. So it's like they comment that they're making a movie, but it's also one of the first movies where the character's like, I know everything. We're in a horror movie. You can't go in the basement. You can't do this and that. And he lays out the rules like Randy did in Scream. So I highly recommend Rolf Konevsky's There's Nothing Out There.
I've seen Slimed recently. I enjoyed that one. Another one I liked was Bugged.
Bugged is great. Yes.
I've heard that's
that
good.
was a great movie. Have you seen Eating Miss Campbell?
Not yet. But
so we just had Lindsay on, Lindsay Crane, the star. We just had her on a couple episodes ago, and she was fantastic. But that's a solid movie. That's one of my favorite movies too. Like,
I can't wait to see it. Yeah, Liam just had a premiere at Smod Castle, I believe it's called, the Kevin Smith new Kevin Smith Independent Theater in Jersey, right near where they shot Clerks. And I think that went well. Unfortunately, I was away at the time, but I heard it went well for him. Plus, he did Fright Fest, the Arrow, the thing Arrow sponsors. So it's really cool that he's getting around.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Very cool. Well, you kind of touched on some stuff that I've always been interested in with Troma. I think more of my kind of Troma heritage education, if you will, was kind of the late 80s and into the 90s, you know, starting with Toxic Avenger and then ending kind of in the Terra Firma, Romeo and Juliet, all the classics. Sergeant Kabuki Man. I always wondered for years why they didn't make a sequel to Sergeant Kabuki Man, so I'm glad he's getting love more in the recent decade. But I've always thought it seems like Troma has kind of like a two-tiered approach, and maybe you can kind of speak to that, where they do kind of produce in-house stuff and stuff that like Lloyd has a active hand in, but they're also a distribution company, right? So they're buying up cheap, independent films and trying to get them seen to a larger audience and that kind of thing too. So can you speak a little bit to kind of how they approach stuff? Because I know that they're going to festivals, they're probably buying up stuff, making relationships with young directors, and certainly a lot of directors like Eli Roth have kind of come out of that whole Troma school.
Yeah, so many people. I mean, when I was there at Troma, I saw a lot of ways that people got their movies distributed through Troma. So there were certain things like, for instance, the guy Brandon Bassam, he made he co-wrote, he wrote Lloyd's latest movie, #Shakespeare Shitstorm. But the way that he came to Troma was, I used to go to the Upright Citizens Brigade for like sketch comedy classes, and I wanted to just meet people and stuff. And while I was there, people were talking about this movie Feartown USA that they were making. And years later, I saw like somebody who was associated with the movie posted, free screening of Feartown USA, free on YouTube. And I said, what is this? So I looked it up, and it was just like free on YouTube. So I contacted, I said, is this movie available for distribution? It would be perfect for Troma. So we brought it into Troma, and it ended up getting distribution for both the Slashing and Feartown USA. So that was one that I like discovered myself, but people mail in all sorts of stuff. Sometimes we used to get VHS tapes, DVDs, online screener links, all sorts of stuff, and people just sending it in. And some of it's not right for Troma, so some of it gets passed on. But I heard recently that they put out like 20 movies last month or something like that on Troma Now. So they're just cranking them out on Troma Now.
I believe it.
I feel
I
like
actually sent a script to Troma.
See they
like 2 years
accept
ago.
unsolicited materials, and yes, while there's a script, people read the scripts. Every script gets read, but sometimes it's hard for Lloyd to get those movies off the ground because he's either doing his own thing or he's not ready, or So your script, what is it called?
It's called The Hobo Diaries.
Oh, hello.
Kellen has allegedly read it. It was good. Right?
Great.
I remember when you were
also
talking about
bites
that.
Yeah,
on
I still have my copy of the script.
Well, I'll find out from Lloyd's latest assistant if the Hobo Diaries is at the top of the pile, and I'll let you know. But I think actually there's an email, acquisitions@troma.com, that any filmmaker can submit their stuff. And also a great way to get in with Troma is through Troma Dance, because Troma Dance is free to submit, and they have it every year. And a lot of filmmakers get involved with Troma just through that. So I would highly recommend, if you have a short or a feature completed that's in, sort of the Troma style, even some movies that you wouldn't be suspecting that Troma would put out, sometimes they put it out, and it works, and it really does reach a higher audience.
Yeah.
So did you have like an active role at any point, John, in kind of screening some of the material that was coming through? I know.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, I've also kind of dabbled in the music industry and stuff too, so I'm also curious kind of how your journey into the music has been too. But just the fact that any film studio, much less one that's got 40 years of heritage with Troma and low budget horror films, would accept unsolicited material when that's like not at all the norm, and the music and film industry is just, the amount of stuff they must get must be overwhelming.
It is. It's a lot of stuff. When I was there, like I said, it would be scripts all the time, movies all the time. I watched my fair share of stuff, and I recommended a lot of stuff. While I was there, movies like Hectic Knife got distributed. VHS Massacre. I'm the one who personally signed the Grindsploitation series, even though I had nothing to do with distribution at the time. I just felt it strongly, like, this is cool. This is like a showcase for a lot of independent filmmakers in an anthology. Tony Newton, he reached out, and we got it done because it just needed to get done. And now I think they're on their 11th or 12th installment of the series. It's insane.
Wow.
But yeah, like I said, it's just, and usually there's a person in charge of distribution. I don't know what it's like at the Troma office now. I haven't been there in like 2 or 3 years, but I'm pretty sure that they're still screening stuff. They put out 20 movies on Troma now, so they're still accepting material. As far as the music is concerned, they also get stuff. I mean, Lloyd put in so many different songs from Shakespeare's Shitstorm that people just sent in. There's a band called The Big Bad. Mm-hmm. They handed Lloyd a CD at a convention, and they ended up being in the movie at the climax, performing live, and their song is heavily featured. So simple things
very
like
cool.
That. Yeah.
It's very, very punk rock.
Man of the people, Lloyd.
Oh yeah.
So since you brought it up, we got to talk about Shakespeare's Shitstorm, and I got to be curious because that's a Troma version of Shakespeare's The Tempest. In another life, I used to be an English literature teacher, so I gotta love my Shakespeare stuff, and I know he's done a lot of allusions to Shakespeare over the years. Obviously, Romeo and Juliet, probably the most popular.
Oh yeah.
I think Terra Firma has some allusions to Shakespeare.
Yeah, there's stuff. Lloyd also always quotes "To thine own self be true." That's like his favorite quote, because he feels that you should. So be true to yourselves.
Yeah. So tell us about the experience of Shakespeare's Shitstorm, and how'd you get involved in that? And of course, and true, it can't just be a storm. It's got to be a storm of shit. And a giant beluga whale.
That's right. It's quite literal. Shakespeare's Shitstorm. It's not a figurative shitstorm, although it is. It's also literal and figurative. So I got involved just because I was working at Troma at the time, and we went to a market screening at Cannes. We went to the Cannes Film Festival in 2017, and a market screening, you like rent the thing so that critics and buyers could see the movie.
They play
And
All the Love You Can all the time.
I wish I actually wish that they had. We should have screened that, like the 20th anniversary of All the Love You Can.
Yeah,
I think it was 20
that was a
years
good
ago.
one.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
great
been-
one. It's
it's
very
good.
bizarre, but good. It's almost like Lloyd wanted to piss off the people at Warner Brothers and stuff like that. I don't know if everybody's seen it, but there's a scene with like a dog and the Warner Brothers across the way. Go seek
Mhm.
that out. It's a great doc.
That is good.
Yeah. So I was Lloyd's assistant. I had just co-produced Return. And I was doing like little other things at the company, whatever. And one day at the office after Cannes, Lloyd said, I'm about to do The Tempest. He's pulling the trigger on The Tempest. And because he had wanted to do The Tempest, he said he would have done it right after Tromeo and Juliet with James Gunn, but he personally felt that he wanted to play Prospero, and he thought that he was too young at the time to play Prospero properly. And now that he's, he describes it, Lloyd, as he's kind of coming to the end of his career, and Prospero is a magician that's sort of losing his magical powers and reflecting on his life. So Lloyd wanted to play that role. On top of that, he decided to play his own twin sister and directed 80% of the movie in drag.
So pro drag trauma.
Not only pro drag. Debbie Rochon said, because you watch like the Apocalypse Soon or Poultry in Motion, all the great documentaries about the making of Troma movies. We have one coming out called Brown is the Warmest Color. Debbie Rochon said that this was the calmest she had ever seen Lloyd on a set, and it was all because he was so like comfortable in women's clothing, just like relaxed, doing his thing. It was amazing. There was only like one flip out. It's unheard of for a Troma set.
Well, that was the same deal for Ed Wood, right? Maybe it's a
Sure,
little connection.
Yeah, and then the other thing that was amazing is that Lloyd did interview while on the set of Shakespeare's Shitstorm. # Shakespeare's Shitstorm. That's Lloyd also as a stickler for that title. But he did an interview for Cursed Films. I don't know if you guys know that on Shudder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved his episode because he was all about safety and everything. He was,
Yes.
that whole series was great. I don't know how John Landis had another movie after that.
No, that's
I don't
terrible.
Yeah, he was in director's jail for like 2 minutes and then
Yeah,
made a few others. I mean, I still like Innocent Blood. I still like John Landis as a director, but whatever. But Lloyd, it's interesting that Lloyd got to be on that episode and he was in drag the whole time, and it was just a surreal moment in time. But it's funny because Lloyd was talking about that whole John Landis thing many years before. I set up a thing while I was his assistant at the Pratt in Brooklyn, Pratt University, which is a great film school, and we went to a cinematography class. And it was all these like young Brooklynite kids who's cinematography students, and Lloyd got invited in for the day to direct a music video and work with the kids. And so he's giving like his warm-up speech, and he's like, we have the 3 rules of production: safety to humans, safety to people's property, and make a good movie. And John Landis is a murderer. And he's just like, he's like, they weren't safe on the set. They killed Vic Morrow and all this stuff. And some of the kids were like, what? Like they had never heard of this. This was maybe like 3 or 4 years before.
Yeah, this was
Cursed
legendary, but that Cursed Films really got it out.
It really
into the
brought it
public.
out. But Lloyd's been talking about it for a while. And you know what? It's true. Safety to humans, safety to, and now he's put in parentheses, and animals, not just humans, animals as well. So
no cannibal holocaust here.
no, that's probably the most disturbing part of that movie. Forget about the rape fiesta that happens at the end. It's the animal slaughters that is.
That's why it's my most hated movie of all time. Like
Animal
I
Slaughters.
respect it. I'll never watch it again.
And that's just the most famous jungle cannibal movie that did that. There was a lot of like Bruno
Cannibal for Rocks. I don't even know.
Cannibal for Rocks. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I appreciate Joe Bob putting the only Joe Bob segments of that movie on show.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, no, they do that for a lot. I think that's what set off the only Joe Bob segments, was because some people just wanted to watch that without the Cannibal Holocaust movie. So then they started putting on more and more of the episodes, which is it's good. It's if you don't want to sit through the movie and just get the information. Like, I highly, highly, highly recommend to anybody who hasn't seen it is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Just Joe Bob segments. It's
Oh, yeah.
longer than the actual movie, and he gives you so much information. It's
So
incredible.
much. I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he settles the score about whether or not Toby Hooper directed Poltergeist.
Poltergeist or not.
He
Yeah.
absolutely directed Poltergeist. So,
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's disrespectful that's been a rumor that Steven Spielberg did most of it for 40 years.
Yeah, and Steven Spielberg, I guess Joe Bob said that Steven Spielberg sort of perpetuated it by not saying anything at all and not correcting it. He didn't come out and say, definitively.
But he was also actively working on E.T., I think, when Poltergeist was happening.
So he had to be secret about it. It was a whole thing.
Yeah. But yeah, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in music and how that kind of become your entryway into filmmaking and the whole crazy world of horror films.
Yeah, so music, I've always been singing to myself ever since I did a waltz out of the womb, so to speak, and I've been singing ever since. So when I was a kid, I would just make up songs and all sorts of stuff. I think the first song that I ever wrote was called Jamie Poops All Day Long. She Never Stops Pooping.
Sounds like a hit to me.
It's a fucking hit, yo. So then throughout the years, I learned the guitar and things like that. But then the first proper song I wrote was in, I think it was like sophomore year of high school. It was called Barbecue Maniac. And I like to write songs about food. So that one was based on the guy in the Ain't Nothing But a G-Thang video. I don't know if you remember when they're playing volleyball and it like zooms in on one guy at a barbecue and he turns around and he has a gun in his waistband. I said, who's that guy? Like, so I wrote a song about who he is. Walker Jones is his name.
Okay.
So then from there, people liked Barbecue Maniac, so I started writing more and more songs. I did musical stand-up for a really long time. I sort of, that petered out when I was in LA and I just wanted to be a screenwriter. But I always home recorded for 20 years or more now. I don't even remember when I actually started because I learned how you can export WAV files from Final Cut Pro when we first started on DV cams and stuff. I said, so I can mix a record in Final Cut instead of making a movie, just use the audio. So I did that and I made all sorts of stuff. And then when I got to Troma, some of the guys there had gone to my page and seen that I released a song called Cheeseburgers, or I released this and that and the other thing, and they liked them. So when it came to be Matt Mangiarides, who is the executive producer of The Last Drive-In and one of the creators of the show, he knew that I did music. And then, first he asked me to do the song of Return to Nukem High, where Lloyd tucks his penis. Then years later, he said, we're doing this thing where we're going to resurrect Joe Bob Briggs. And I was a huge fan. And he said, why don't you try a demo? We're going to reach out to a few people, but submit a demo for a theme song and see what happens. So I was so inspired. And I went home and I started thinking, what would Paul Williams do? Paul Williams would write a song that Muppets could sing, celebrating the fact that Joe Bob is back in town. So I wrote that song and it got accepted. So it was pretty amazing.
That was great song too. Very catchy.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it's still... It came so fast. Sometimes things, take a little time and then you need to rewrite them, whatever. That one came out fully formed, except for one line that was originally it was going to be a 48-hour marathon. So it was a line in there instead of blood, beasties, boobies, and mo, it was 48 hours to go. And that was the one note. They said, we switched that now. So just do this one bit and then it's done. It's crazy.
Very cool. Very cool. So what do you use for your editing and your music making now? Are you are you a Logic guy? Are you a Pro Tools guy?
Well, I'm ashamed to say this, but I'm still on GarageBand. I'm slowly weeding myself off. I bought Logic finally.
I do GarageBand too.
Okay. It's not bad. I like it a lot. There's a few functionalities that I wish would be improved.
Yeah, you have to kind of play to your limitations a little bit. But.
Yes, but Logic, there are workarounds. So I'm slowly learning Logic and I'm mixing some stuff. And the good thing is it's compatible. So I could take the stuff from GarageBand, put it in Logic and work with it. So
you're
I'm learning
Mac guy.
Oh yeah, Mac guy. Yeah. Since the early 2000s, probably. My first personal computer was a G4.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
had
yeah.
the weird colors and the lights.
Oh yeah, had the weird
What was,
colors
what
like
was
the
your color?
tower.
Yeah.
Mine was just gray.
Okay.
I got the
Our
plain
theme
gray.
song was written on GarageBand by
Oh,
Mr. Lee down there in the corner.
hell
Hey.
yeah.
Hey,
Another fellow composer.
All right, good. So I'm not. I disparaged GarageBand for no reason. You guys understand that GarageBand is a great tool. It really is. I can't believe
It
they gave that
is.
out for free. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mix our podcast on GarageBand.
It's so good. I mean, anybody out there who's afraid to start because you don't think you'll understand it, GarageBand's one of the easiest things you can learn. Honestly, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
very, very simple learning curve.
Yeah.
Just to at least get started. There's some nuances in there that you got to kind of play around with to get used to. But as far as just if you want to just compose a quick, dirty song, GarageBand's amazing.
1, 2, 3. And you know what? The thing that pisses me off the most about GarageBand is crossfading. Like you go to Premiere Pro, crossfades are the easiest thing ever. GarageBand, it takes you 20 minutes to do a single crossfade.
Yeah.
So I just started like exporting and doing crossfades in Premiere. So now I use 2 systems.
Yeah, I wish you could change tempos. You know, have something in one tempo.
Yes,
and then sometimes you want certain parts to be faster played, and then
faster,
so that's
or
frustrating.
sometimes you want to go to 3/4 real easy. You know, whatever it is.
That's a tough transition. Yeah,
I heard Logic has that though, so I'll report back in about 6 months when I'm more Logic savvy.
Well, that's a good handoff time for Kellen. You got some questions for John?
Oh,
yeah. Staying with the music. So how much freedom? You know, you're working with Trauma. You mentioned earlier that Lloyd had an idea for a song, based on the Buffalo Bill scene, and kind of gives you guidance there. As far as do you look at the movie as it's being filmed and kind of piece music together? Do you read the script? How much freedom do you get, or do you already have stuff that you feel like would fit, and you're just like, here? What about this? What about this?
It's all different. I mean, with Trauma, it was all different stuff. Like sometimes my things got in there because I was just the person making it. So I said, "Oh, I have the synth track. I could just put it in, whatever." Other people through there requested I had a song called Disco Man or something like that Dylan Mars Greenberg, who worked at Trauma, really liked. They put that in the movie. So things like that, it's just like comes out of nowhere. But like with The Last Drive-In, it could be anything. It could be Joe Bob could say, I have an idea for a song XYZ, and then I have the assignment. I have to go do it. Same thing with Austin Jennings. Sometimes I come up with them. So like Spookies, it was like a collaboration between me and Austin Jennings. He said, all right, we have our new season coming up. What genre would you like to tackle? I said, absolutely. I want to do a hip hop song. It has to be. And he was like, oh, that's great. We're doing this movie Spookies. And it would be awesome if you did like a fake end credits rap song for that movie. And
that has an intro from Joe Bob, doesn't it?
It does, yes. So then we were on set shooting with Joe Bob, and he's like, we need an end credit song to explain how confusing Spooky is. So those things happen organically, but sometimes they happen as a surprise. So for instance, the reason I even I did the theme song, but I wasn't hired as a music supervisor or anything. I was hired as a production coordinator on the first marathon. So I had to do things like get the catering, the craft services, organize transportation, all that sort of stuff. But luckily, the guy Lyle Blackburn, who is the cryptozoologist they had on for the Boggy Creek episode, he was supposed to perform a song from that movie called Nobody Sees the Flowers But Me. For some reason, he couldn't learn it in time, or he couldn't bring his guitar or something. So Austin Jennings said, hey, you have a guitar? It could be a great bit if he calls out to the production coordinator and he just says, oh, I have a guitar, which was me. So luckily, I got to learn that song, play it. The first time I met Joe Bob was I walked into his dressing room. We rehearsed the song, barely introduced ourselves. And then afterwards, like, who are you? Like, what's going on? So then we did the song on set. Nobody Sees the Flowers Bloom But Me. And it was a great hit. Like, people loved it. It was awesome. So he started writing me into the show once we got picked up. So it was just really luck, right place, right time. And then again, another surprise was the Madman theme song. I forgot what that was, season 1. I forgot what episode, but just on set, Justin Martell, the executive producer of the show, said, hey, you guys should perform the Madman theme. And it's like, okay. Joe Bob said, great. John, do you know it? I said, no, but I can learn it. So I went 15 minutes, learned it. We did it. So It's just like really awesome stuff. We have a few things coming up this year that I'm really excited about. Two I can, I'm not going to say what they are, but they're just like assignments. Essentially, what we've been trying to do is not repeat ourselves.
Right.
And one of them is something that I wanted to do for a really long time, and it's quite exciting. So
you talked about doing spookies, and, having in your head, I want to do a hip hop song.
Yep.
And it's like an old school. So listening to your music, you can't pin down. There's not a genre to pin down. It's all over the place. Like, from song to song, you're in, country and western. You're doing hip hop. You're doing dance music. You're doing grunge, alternative, acoustic. It's all over. So, do you have? Is it like that with all of them? You're like, I want to try to do a '90s grunge song, and then you write lyrics to it, or do you just play around with different sounds and think, oh, I could put a song to that?
Yeah, it's throughout my life. As far as making music, it's all happened in different ways. One will be a genre experiment. In maybe 2005 or something, I just sat down and I said, what if I write some Irish drinking songs this year for St. Paddy's Day? And then I wrote 7 or 8 songs as a genre experiment just for fun. Sometimes it comes up in conversation. Somebody says a phrase. I said, oh my God, turkey and beans would make a great title for a song. Sometimes I just pick a food. I wrote a song called Burritos the other day, just like it's very strange how these things I forgot what songwriter, Tom Petty or somebody, he says he just like picks them out of the sky. Like the song's already there and he just like pulls them in as like almost an antenna. I really feel that it's because it's like, there's so many ways to approach it. You could start with the lyrics. You could start with the music. You could start with a feeling. You could start with a genre. But more times than not for Joe Bob Briggs, the Last Drive-In, we try to start with genre. What haven't we done yet? We haven't done a spoken word jazz thing. Let's try that. Let's do that. So for me, it's great because I get challenged. And sometimes I feel like succeed and sometimes I don't. But even when you fail, you learn,
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm just going out on a limb based on the VHS tapes behind you. The action
great
figures
selection
and
too. Yeah.
Listening to
I see Porky's and the Blob.
Speed. Home
yeah.
Alone, the Home Alone 1.
Oh yeah.
But so obviously listening to your albums on iTunes, I don't do Spotify. I try not to be mainstream. It's just
I agree.
I got used to Apple.
They rob everybody.
Exactly. There's obviously a 90s influence. Like listening to the songs, I could hear that 90s era grunge sound in some of them. I could hear some songs. There was one song I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but it had a Depeche Mode feel. Is there any particular
absolutely.
kinds of artists that kind of inspire you when you're doing do you call back on like your childhood songs that maybe meant something to you, or like where do you pull from?
All over. So my favorite band, it's there. I would say they're my favorite, but just because they're so influential to me, is Ween. I don't know if you guys know Ween. Ween is an incredible band that they are also genre hopping artists. So before I even knew who Ween was, I was doing these genre experiments. But then when I heard their music, I said, holy shit, this is it. These guys are like actually doing it. One record, they do a whole country record. Then the next one's a psychedelic record. The next one's like pop, rock pop or whatever. And they just inspired me so much that I said, okay, this is the path to try and go down, because that's the one that goes closest to how I feel creatively. But there's so many bands that I'm inspired by. Like when we did Lonely Red Christmas, they wanted a really sad country tune. So I listened to a lot of Hank Williams and stuff like that just to get the feel down. And I think that through osmosis comes in, and then you can force it out through your own, it doesn't, I don't think it sounds like a Hank Williams tune, but it's got the mood,
Right.
Depeche Mode. I'll listen to a Depeche Mode song and go like, oh, okay, that's where it is. The drums is the thing that'll make it sound like that's actually how I cracked Silence of the Ducks. Once I nailed the drums, that song sounds nothing like Goodbye Horses, but the feeling is there because there was something in the drums that sort of sounded like something, and then it seems to be a knockoff. So
Yeah, that
It's
rhythm
hard. It's hard to
section.
say.
That rhythm section makes a much bigger difference to vibe than a lot of people give it credit for.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
the drums definitely drive, and bass as well. Bass can
Yeah.
completely drive a song.
yeah, it can just shape the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know what the main. I guess my main influences were always obviously Ween. We got Frank Zappa is a huge influence on me. I mean, the guy is a genius. The Beatles, of course. Madonna's work. That's like so. It shaped my childhood. She was ever present on MTV and all that stuff.
Well, she was the '90s for pop.
Sure, yeah. Stevie Wonder. I mean, that's one of the Wu-Tang Clan. So all these, it's just like a mishmash of all different genres that gets, put in the soup in the cauldron, and it just kind of craps out of my brain.
Do you do much on the piano or the keys, or are you more of a guitar-based guy?
I'm much better at the guitar. Still, I'm not a lead guitarist, but I can play. Oh yes, Frank Zappa and the Mothers, Absolutely Free. Great record. Great record. Yeah, no leads. I mean, I could do like a solo if it takes me 9 or 10 or 20 hours to do it with heavy editing. But I'm a synth guy, but I play a lot of individual fingers in the synth,
Gotcha.
and then arpeggios and stuff like that. So I'm starting to learn chords slowly, but I can't play. I mean, Great Balls of Fire. I mean, my dream to play Great Balls of Fire. So I'll get there maybe when I'm like 57, 80.
Yeah, still great for atmosphere and stuff, especially with scoring and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I have one more thing I just want to say. So I've been driving. I don't know if you're familiar with Nashville. The traffic there is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the bad drivers from California now live in Nashville.
True.
Yes.
So my driving theme for things like that used to be a song by The Offspring called "Bad Habit." I don't
Yeah.
know if you know that song with
I
the
do.
ending part where he goes off. The drivers are weird. So listening in my car today, listening to some of your albums, I got to a song on Bad Techno
Yeah.
called Douchebag. And if there has ever been a more appropriate song for the way that I feel when I am driving in traffic, that may be that it was almost word for word what I have said before talking to people that cut me off.
Wait,
So
that's
thank
crazy.
you for that song.
So Douchebag, I'm surprised because I thought you were going to say Road Rage. The song Road Rage is about killing people on the highway. It's like I was a food delivery driver in LA, and I was so mad one day that I started screaming like, "Go, motherfucker, go!" And I went home and I wrote that song. And but Douchebag, that came from a different place. That was I mean, it's good for traffic, but it's also good for life. I mean, it was just one.
It's more the way I feel towards the person. I'm like,
Good.
You're such a douchebag.
Yes, you are just a dirty douchebag. I can't even stand to look at your face. I never liked you. I hope you die when you go on vacation. It's just like everything. There was this one piece of shit from my hometown who just, no matter what I did, I mean, I'm a very peaceful and loving person, but no matter what I did, this guy was just either jealous or just a fucking prick. So I said, what's the best thing? Not to beat the shit out of him. It's to write a song that will last for a long time, even after he's gone. And it's just like, you're a douchebag. That's what you are. And I hope he heard it.
I do as well, because that was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Road Rage text back and forth all the time. Like, it's awful.
Road Rage
It's
sucks.
like that scene from Always Sunny, like, you dumb bitch, you stupid dumb.
I had a moment like that. I had a moment like that today because I had to drop my wife off at the airport and I missed the departures lane. I had to circle around twice. And all the while, I don't know why there's 18-wheelers that go through the airport. Like, what are they doing?
I love that scene from European Vacation. He gets stuck in the Big Ben Parliament. I feel like that sometimes when I'm stuck in traffic.
Yeah. So before we wrap things up, I have one more question. I'm late to the party, but I just watched like all the back rooms on YouTube.
Yes.
Got the book. Will there be more of Yuki's back rooms?
I would love that. That came together in a strange way. I went to this movie theater in Jersey, and the place just looked like that. It was almost like an abandoned mall where there was an AMC like tucked in the middle. And I said, this is literally the back room. So I just like went around my iPhone, got the footage. And then when we started to formulate the ideas for Yuki and John's Patreon buffet, which I do with Yuki Nakamura, I said, okay, cool. I have all this like weird footage. I'll just have Yuki do the voiceover like he's lost in the back rooms. And I think it came out pretty good and pretty funny.
I enjoyed that because it's just Yuki, just himself, like his character. That just makes it funny that he's lost somewhere. That alone is funny.
And I like
you
that
could
he's
have put
just
him
like
in a supermarket or a Target, it would still be hilarious.
It would still be funny. He's just like kind of like questioning, like, why is there nobody here? You know, it's just like, he's not scared. He's non-phased by the whole thing. I would love to do another one. I would love to do a lot more with Yuki and putting him in narrative positions. I want to do like a Frankenstein with Yuki, or put him in a castle. Yuki like running away from ghosts in the castle. Be like,
I would watch the shit out of that.
100%.
Very Scooby-Doo.
It's of Yuki Do. We do a Yuki Do.
Yuki Do. I like it.
The thing about Yuki is he's a skeptic, so no matter what happens, he's gonna keep that. Like, even if the devil is sitting there about to kill him, be like, what's happening? This isn't real. I don't believe in this stuff. He doesn't believe anything. No supernatural, no ghosts, no nothing. He just thinks that this is life. It happens, and then when you die, it's nothing but darkness. You don't even know you're dead. It's just at the end. And it's a very strange, to me, I mean, I'm afraid. I still have nightmares about Linda Blair and The Exorcist. I'm afraid of everything. So I think that's a good duo. I'm the fraidy cat, and he's sort of the skeptic. So I would love to do more like that with him. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so that's going to be a wrap on this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, the church Facebook group. Subscribe on YouTube wherever you're listening to this podcast now. Subscribe, share. That'd be great. Go download and buy all of John's music.
Thank you.
You're on Bandcamp for sure.
Yeah, you can find all my stuff at Bad Techno, which is either Twitter or Instagram. And there's portals to Linktree. It got everything that I have ever done, including the stuff with Yuki, the Trauma, before Trauma, Last Drive, and everything's up there.
Awesome. So go do that. Follow, subscribe to his YouTube channels and all that fun stuff. Him and Yuki's podcast, just called Podcast Buffet, right?
Well, so we have the Patreon buffet where we have like 6 or 7 shows that are under the paywall, but we started putting out a free weekly show called Yuki and John's Podcast Buffet that you can find wherever podcasts are consumed. I just love picking Yuki's brain because no matter what subject it is, he gave me this from Japan. This is
nice.
A ninja throwing star, just stuff like that. He surprises me all the time. But just pick a subject. Say, Yuki, this week we're going to talk about the French Revolution, and he has opinions. So it's endless with the guy. Yeah.
And this episode is actually going to come out April 17th. So this Friday, you're listening to this, The Last Drive-In comes back for its 5th season.
Yes, season 5 is alive.
Shudder. I know we're all excited about that. We keep seeing stuff about Shudder and maybe not existing anymore, but Joe Bob will live on, whatever happens. I think that the shakeup is we're solid for a bit. I think Shudder's not going anywhere for at least a little while. I mean, we have, like I said, season 5, and I haven't heard of any shutdown. So, unfortunately, there were some layoffs, but I think it'll be around for a little while longer. And like you said, yes, Joe Bob will not go away, even if Shudder goes. Joe Bob, yeah. Netflix would be salivating, like, we got to get him. We got to give him whatever. Screenbox, even, you
never know what could happen. I mean, there's so many opportunities. Joe Bob could do what Mystery Science did, and do his own Googleplex or whatever they're doing, which is I heard is hugely successful. So the future is wide open. What's that thing? The future's so bright you got to wear shades. That's so
Yeah, I could definitely see a Joe Bob riff tracks kind of model kind of thing.
What would be sick is like Joe Bob does his segments and then it goes to the movie, but it's the riff tracks guy doing the commentary.
That would be a great collaboration, actually.
Somebody mentioned that on Twitter. I was like, that's got to be an episode one day. So hopefully.
Awesome.
I'm sure Mike Nelson would be down.
Hell yeah.
John, thank you so much for taking some time with us. This was awesome. Love to have you back on again. We'll talk about a movie if you're choosing and do a deep dive. So that's going to be it for this week. We'll see you next week. I don't know what movie we're doing, but I'm sure it'll be great. So signing off, I'm Jay. with Mr. John Brennan, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
keep it spooky.